All right, let's dive in. Today, we're going to unpack a really provocative framework about what makes us human. The basic idea that our single greatest evolutionary advantage might actually be the seed of our most destructive flaw. It's a wild ride, so let's trace the logic together. So, get this, the entire argument kicks off with this one really stark statement that our ability to eat pretty much everything, plants, animals, you name it, isn't our strength, it's our doom. I mean, wow, that's a heck of a starting point. How could that possibly be true? And that's really the big question we're digging into, isn't it? We're going to follow the breadcrumbs, step by step, to see how this framework connects our diet to a deep hypocrisy that it claims shapes everything, from our morals to our entire modern world. Okay, so here's the core thesis. Being an omnivore, being able to kill for meat, but also live peacefully munching on plants, creates this moral ambiguity, a kind of split personality that, other animals just don't have to deal with. You can kind of think of it like this, in three hypothetical paths. You've got your pure carnivore, where killing to eat is totally normal. It's just instinct. Then you have the pure herbivore, where the default setting is peaceful and conflict is the weird exception. And then there's us, the human path, stuck right in the middle, wrestling with this moral ambiguity and performing what the framework calls theatrics around the whole act of killing. And this is where that hypocrisy really comes into focus. On one hand, we have this huge, powerful taboo against killing another person. It's murder, it's the ultimate crime. But on the other hand, we've built this massive, global, industrialized machine for killing animals that's so disconnected from our daily lives, we barely even think about it. This meat paradox, the framework says, is kind of like the original sin of our species. All right, so that's the big idea. But you gotta ask, right? Does it actually hold up in the real world? Let's do a little reality check on this framework with two amazing examples, orcas and gorillas. First up, that carnivore ideal. Let's look at orcas. They're incredibly intelligent, they have complex cultures, but their killing is purely for survival. They aren't stockpiling for fun. Their stability doesn't come from some higher moral code. Nope. It comes from being a top predator that's perfectly adapted to its little corner of the world. They're bounded by ecology, plain and simple. And what about the peaceful herbivore? Well, gorillas are mostly pretty chill, but their societies are no utopia. You still see conflict over resources, even horrible stuff like infanticide. Their path isn't some morally superior choice, it's just constrained by what's on the menu. Just like the orcas, they're bounded by their biology. So, okay, if real animals don't fit neatly into these boxes, then our diet can't be the whole story. There has to be something else going on, right? The framework says there's a much deeper connection we need to make. So, what is the real root of our weird pathological loop? And this is where the whole thing just clicks into place and gets really, really interesting. The argument proposes that our omnivorous diet gets combined with another absolutely crucial fact about us, and together they create a pretty dangerous cocktail. Here it is, the big twist. The secret ingredient isn't just what we eat, it's the fact that we are, let's be honest, physically weak. Compared to the other top animals on this planet, we are just not natural-born killers, at least not in a physical fight. I mean, just look at this chart. It says it all. Our bite force is a measly 162 psi. A chimpanzee, almost 1,300. A tiger's over 1,000. We are fundamentally, biologically underpowered. And that physical weakness, that deficit, forced us down a totally different path when it came to conflict. Think about it. When two powerful animals like tigers fight, it usually ends when one of them gives a clear signal of submission, like showing its belly. It's a kind of honor code. The fight is over. But what happens when two weak humans fight? We don't have that overwhelming power to end it. So what do? We tell our moms, we build alliances, we form coalitions, we grab a rock, we use tools and social pressure to fight our battles indirectly. Okay, so now let's take that ancient blueprint, that whole system of indirect, tool-based conflict, and see how it scales up to shape our entire modern world, especially the kinds of leaders we get. See, because our systems are built on alliances and indirect power, they don't really reward the physically strongest person in the room. Who do they reward? The most charming, the most cunning, the most manipulative. The framework argues our society basically creates a perfect petri dish for dark triad personality traits to thrive in our leaders. And you might think that's just a theory, but the data, well, it's pretty wild. This number here, about 4%, that's the estimated number of CEOs who show psychopathic traits. That's roughly 4 times higher than in the general population. It's not a bug in the system, it's a feature. So if that's the case, how do the few control the many? Well, the framework introduces this chilling idea it calls progress as a pacifier. The theory is that the constant promise of new gadgets, new tech, a better tomorrow, it isn't always about making things better. Sometimes it's a tool, a narrative that the elites use to keep the rest of us sedated, distracted, and compliant. And that brings us to the final piece of the puzzle. And honestly, it's the most disturbing part of this entire framework. If progress is just a pacifier, what happens when that's not enough anymore? What's the final layer of control? The argument is that the system is evolving. It's moving beyond these external pacifiers. The ultimate control isn't about shaping what you think anymore. It's about shaping how you think. The game is moving from controlling your environment to controlling your actual biology. And don't think this is some far-off sci-fi stuff. These are real technologies being worked on right now. You've got DARPA's N3 program for non-surgical brain interfaces. You've got optogenetics, which uses light to literally edit our genetic code. And smart dust, tiny, injectable, wireless sensors that can monitor and stimulate the brain. The tools for direct internal control are already being built. The metaphor from the source material just captures the whole terrifying endpoint perfectly. The final move in this game of control isn't to just take the honey from the bees. It's to reprogram the bees themselves, so they're happier, more compliant, and more productive for the hive. So, we end up here, not with a neat answer, but with a pretty haunting question. We've traced this line all the way from what we eat, to how physically weak we are, to our politics, and finally, to technologies that could one day literally edit our minds. The framework lays out this chilling, complete loop. And if that control loop finally closes inside our own skulls, what, if anything, is left to escape?